Today I'm going to let you in on some concealer tips that are guaranteed to give you pretty perfection. And as a bonus, we are going to talk about this new Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate concealer, the proceeds of which evidently are going toward fueling Tom Ford's Bentley and private jet. Pretty people, it's Crystal, your very own personal beauty pro. I actually am a professional makeup artist. I work in what is called commercial advertising, so editorial, and I've done many a New York Fashion Week. I have done hundreds of faces of all the races, so there is guaranteed to be gems in my videos for everyone. In addition to doing what I love, I absolutely love sharing the knowledge that I have gained and my love for the art of beauty. So whether you're an up-and-coming artist, an established fellow artist, or just a girly girl that loves beauty, whatever your reason for watching, I want you to leave feeling uplifted and pretty. Today we're going to talk about concealer. I get lots of questions and there's still a lot of confusion about concealer, exactly what to use it for, how to use it, which shades to choose. So the tips in this video are going to help you to have pretty perfect concealer. And as a bonus, we are going to talk about the new Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate concealer. So we have a few things started with the complexion and the eyes. The eyes today is the very pretty Tom Ford Mercurial Quad. And then for skin, I have my usual skincare routine, but today we also have a primer. This is Dermablend. This is the Instagrip Jelly Primer. It's a beautiful primer, a very effective primer, and it has such a nice clinginess to it. Of the jelly primers that I have tried, this one has the most cling and the most grip and a really beautiful smoothing, lifting effect on the skin. And then we are using the Shade and Illuminate foundation by Tom Ford, and this shade is 8.7 Golden Almond. It's a nice nourishing foundation, gives you a nice solid medium coverage and a glowy finish. We are going to demonstrate not just one but two of the new Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate concealers. The packaging is absolutely beautiful with the Tom Ford brand, and this is no exception, and I think it's a gorgeous touch that it matches the foundation. It's heavy weighted, has that beautiful gold trim. The first shade is a soft caramel, 5WO Tan. And that's 5WO Tan, beautiful golden caramel. The second shade is 3WO Latte. It's almost exactly like its name. It's this cafe latte color. When it comes to concealer, many people have it in their routine. They're not always exactly sure which shades to choose or how to apply it, or even what it's really for. And then you have other people who shy away from concealer altogether because they're not quite sure how it works. So this should help with that and help people to really make the most of their concealer. The most important tip for success with concealer is knowing what it's for, what you in particular are using it for. The primary reasons to use it are either to cover blemishes, discoloration, darkness, anywhere on the face, and particularly people focus under the eye, but you can use concealer in other spots on the face as well. The other reason is to use it to highlight, lift, and accentuate different areas of the face, usually under the eye and the high points of the face. Here's where some people run into a challenge. A lot of times people get the advice to just go a few shades lighter than your foundation, and that's where a lot of looks go wrong. If you simply go a few shades lighter than your foundation, but you're trying to cover darkness or cancel out blemishes, that may not always work. That's when color theory comes into play, but it doesn't have to be super complicated. This applies whether you're on the fair end of the spectrum in C20, for example, or whether you're on the deep end of the spectrum in W50. If, for example, you're NC20 and you have a little yellow in your undertone, if you just go a few shades lighter than your foundation, you're going to lighten the darkness, but you're not going to conceal it or camouflage it. You're just going to lighten it. So what you end up with often is just a paler look under the eye with some darkness peeking through. And remember, we learned in elementary school, yellow and blue make green. So that's why a lot of times, sometimes people get an ashy cast, and although they put on concealer, it doesn't quite look as perfected as they would like it to. Or they may put it on a blemish, but still see that shadow of the blemish peeking through. So what you need to do is make sure that when you choose a concealer, you choose the right undertone to cancel out darkness. You might go a little lighter, but it also has to be a warmer undertone. When you apply concealer on a blemish around the face, the blemish should disappear. Color correctors are also things that are used for that, but we'll save that for another video. Also, when you apply concealer under the eye, if you're doing it for darkness, the darkness should be canceled out and disappear, and you should be left with a perfected under eye. It shouldn't look like a cast of darkness still peeking through. So you can use a concealer close to your skin tone with the right undertone if you just want perfection, or you can use one lighter than your skin tone with the correct undertone if you want perfection and highlighting. And as a bonus, we're going to use the new Tom Ford concealer to actually demonstrate what I just explained. Now, I don't have a lot of natural darkness under the eye. If I'm fatigued, sometimes I may get a little. But I definitely always want concealer when I want that lifted, perfected look, and I want the dimension or the natural tones in my skin to be accentuated and not just one flat color. Now, how to apply concealer? You can definitely pat it on with fingers. Fingers are a great way to warm the product and really melt it and merge it with the skin. The only challenge is when you want to get in the really tight areas or you want to do something strategic, then fingers are a little large and you need something a little smaller. Sponges are a great way to melt down and blend out concealer. And concealer brushes of various types are really nice too. You can use a flat synthetic concealer brush. In my case, I'm going to use this softer angled concealer brush by Pat McGrath. I love the way this blends and merges softly without disturbing the concealer too much. I'm going to take that 5WO tan shade. I'm just going to use a couple of dots under the eye because a little goes a long way. This concealer is rich and emollient and creamy, and you want to avoid using too much product under the eye, and that will help prevent creasing. This is a shade I would use if I just wanted a nice perfecting look under the eye and a slight lift. This is something that is warm enough to lift my complexion without looking ashy, and it's very natural. Now, I noticed the popular internet thing to do now is to tap a little on the front and to tap a little out here on the outside. Now, there's no crime in doing that, but sometimes people pick up tips and tricks and they don't really know why they're doing it, and sometimes it can backfire a little, especially if you have more darkness. You could actually be accentuating or scooping out the under eye area in a very subtle way by doing that. So make sure when you apply tips that you learn that you actually look in the mirror and see if these things are working for you, or even take a picture with your phone. Then once you apply it, you can gently come in with a sponge, and you want to use very little pressure. You're just kind of tiptoeing across the surface. You don't want to disturb the surface of the concealer. And the other thing, when you apply too much pressure to the under eye when you're applying your concealer, you actually create the creases. Because you notice sometimes an under eye might start out perfectly smoothly, but then when you go in to blend it or you go in to add powder, that's when you see the creasing. That's not an issue with the product necessarily. Sometimes that's an issue with too much pressure. you're gathering the delicate skin under the eye. You're kind of crunching it or subtly gathering it together, and that's what's creating that crinkling effect. So to prevent that, you use a light tiptoe touch to smooth out the concealer. And you also let it set as much as possible before powder so that it doesn't turn into a batter-like texture. Now for the other side, I'm going to use a technique where I'm concealing and highlighting simultaneously. Now this 3WO latte, it's lighter than my complexion, but it also has a golden undertone. And because I don't have blue or a strong darkness under the eye, it's not going to go ashy. The other thing I prefer in a concealer is for it to be a true full coverage. I am really not the biggest fan of concealers that claim to be light or medium coverage. I don't see a huge need for them because if you want light or medium coverage, then your foundation actually does that. So there's not a whole lot of purpose of coming in with a concealer that also has a light or medium coverage. Concealers are to conceal, and so a full coverage is what gives you that. Also, when it's light to medium coverage concealer, that's also when you have some darkness peeking through. You often see highlighting in the forehead, down the center of the nose, the cupid's bow, and the chin area. Those are great places to highlight, but be aware of this. A lot of times you'll see the people dotting or striping in various areas. That really requires precision. You really need to decide exactly how you want the beam of light to look in those places. And a lot of times people just blend it away and you lose the effect like that. So you really have to use small brushes, small tools, and really keep the highlighting in those areas in order to keep the effect. Otherwise, you're kind of just going through the motions, but you're really blending the look away. So what I've done is add a touch of each shade under each eye so that each eye is even. And I want to tell you more about this formula. This goes on creamy and emollient. It is at a luxury price point. I was really curious about the ingredients in this because sometimes ingredients are harder to source, or they might be more rare or more expensive in general. I didn't see anything extremely out of the ordinary. I was familiar with the skin conditioning and the antioxidants and the general skincare that's also in the concealer. It's a silicone-based concealer. It sits beautiful under the eye, and it has a beautiful conditioning effect on the under eye. But what's exceptional about the formula is that although it's so emollient and so creamy, it's self-setting to a degree. It is crease resistant. Nothing may exactly be crease proof, but this is exceptionally crease resistant. I found that it doesn't settle and it doesn't move about even before powdering. And when I powdered it, I got a lovely full day of wear out of it. I haven't set anything yet, so I'm going to finish up the makeup look, set it with a little powder, and then come back. To finish off the look, I'm going to use Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate the cream contour. And then to finish off the cheeks, I'm going to use the bronzer and the highlighter from the Red Harness face palette. Finish off the lips with this beautiful Sicily lipstick. It's in number 10. It's a beautiful flesh tone. And in the spirit of Tom Ford, we will top it off with this crystalline gloss, which is a beautiful nude gloss. I don't want to lose all the glow in the skin, so I'm going to use a big fluffy brush and the Pat McGrath loose powder because I love the way it sets without over mattifying the skin. And then I have something I have been loving so much recently, the La Mer loose powder. I am going to tap a little of that under the eye to set the Tom Ford. And again, because I don't want to over mattify, I want it to have a soft focus finish. So what do I really think of these Tom Ford concealers? Well, I'll tell you my experience with them. I originally did not intend on getting 2 shades. After I picked up my first shade and tested it, I instantly thought I might like it. So much so that I went back and got the second shade, and I was right. Keep in mind that I have tried tons of various formulas of different types of makeup over the course of many years on all types of people and in various situations, on sets, on film and video and print. So generally speaking, I have a good instinct about whether I'm going to like something or not. And this turned out to be just as beautiful as I thought. Again, it is emollient and it is creamy. The advantage in that in a concealer is that it's conditioning to the under eye, which generally is thinner and sometimes tends to be dry on some people. And so if you can get a little emolliency and something moisturizing and conditioning, then that's always good. However, if the under eye is oily, the great thing about this is that it's self-setting. It has a nice balance in the formula to where it doesn't move a ton. So someone has done a really great job putting thought into the formula to make it ideal for the under eye area. And it gets along beautifully with powders. I've tried it with a few different powders at this point, and every powder looks beautiful and smooth. It is definitely at the luxury tier where makeup is concerned. If you have been watching me a while, or if you are pretty observant, then you may have noticed that I often don't comment on the prices of things. It's not that they don't matter, because of course budgets vary, but my philosophy on that is that every person, whether it's an individual or a company, whether they're offering a product or services, that everybody is entitled to determine their own worth. People set the price on what they want and what value they feel they offer, and then it's up to the consumer, the buyer, to determine whether that is the service or the product for them. But I don't believe in criticizing people for setting their prices. Either someone is in the market for that type of thing or they aren't, and of course it has to be worth it to you. Generally speaking, the brand is pretty good about samples, so perhaps you can get one, or you can get someone at the Tom Ford counter to assist you with sampling the product. And I would recommend that at any price point, to sample something if you can. But I do enjoy using it very much on myself, and it is of high enough quality that I would use it on someone else. I enjoyed sharing this with you. I always do. I look forward to seeing you in another video very soon. But until we meet again, keep it pretty.